my iPhone, it is on the same form as my iPad, so it kind of detects the same music. So it's kind of going back between. Okay, which one do you want? Do you want the PowerPoint? Or you want the soundboard mixer? That's why I kept lagging intermittently. To change Wi-Fi.
I've often wondered about that if it's not cell phones that are interfering with things. 'Cause, I mean, it could work fine for a couple of weeks, nothing, no problems, and all of a sudden it just, you can't get it to work for nothing. And maybe it's somebody, maybe one of the kids have come in and they're logged on to through the Wi-Fi. Just for the sound room, nobody else has the password to get into it. So I wouldn't be using it. Nobody else here would be using it. I'd like to follow along in our Bible study. We're in Ruth chapter 2, and we ended up with verse 12. That's the verse we should begin on today. Ruth 2, verse 12. Before we begin our study, let's bow our heads a word of opening prayer. Our Father God in heaven, we approach your throne of grace this morning, thanking you for every blessing we receive from you. We're especially thankful of the gift of your only begotten Son who died on the cross, shedding his blood, that we might have the remission of sins and the hope of eternal life. We're so thankful for his resurrection that the world is at this time focused in on. We ask that you would help them to see that this is an event that really should be celebrated every day, and especially on every first day of the week. But we are so thankful that the resurrection that did occur reminds us that we too will be raised again to eternity. We ask that you will bless us as we go throughout this time of Bible study, that we might gather from your word the things we stand in need of. It will help us to live a more faithful Christian life, strengthening our faith in you. We ask that you will bless our nation, that the laws would never be enacted that would make it more difficult for us to do so. And we hope and pray that these laws will continue as they are for many years to come. We ask your blessings on the sick of our number who are unable to be with us at this time, that you would strengthen and encourage them, and if it be your will, restore them to that portion of health they need and desire. We ask that you will bless those who are recovering from surgeries or have upcoming procedures, that you would bless them and give them a good outcome for those things. Forgive us of our wrongs. We know we sin. We come short of your glory. But we are so thankful again that we have the remission of our sins through Jesus Christ, your Son. We ask all of these favors and blessings and thanks we give in his name, the name of the Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen. Well, we're talking about Ruth gleaning among the sheaves on the barley harvest, clear up into the wheat harvest as well. And of course, she finds favor with Boaz, the man who owns the field, a man of means, who's also a relative to Elimelech, who was Naomi's husband. And Boaz, of course, takes knowledge of her and thinks very highly of her. He admires her. Apparently, she is a very beautiful woman, but she's also a godly woman, a woman who does very well and has converted to Judaism. There's numerous indications, although it doesn't come right out and say in the book of Ruth that she did actually become a Jewess. She certainly did. There's enough indications of that when back in verse 16 of chapter 1, she tells Naomi, "Thy God shall be my God." That's one indication. And in verse 12, there's another indication of that as well. Boaz is talking to her. Starting in verse 11, he hath fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother from the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore. It's come to my knowledge and to my attention that you have treated Naomi, your mother-in-law, very well. Even when you lost your husband, and she was a widow herself, and you kept with her, encouraging her and helping her through. Now in verse 12, he says, "The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust." There's another indication there, isn't it? You come under the wings of Jehovah God. You learn to trust in him. And so the Lord reward you for this work. And the work he's talking about is, of course, her kindness to Naomi. And that manifests itself in several ways. One of the things that Ruth is not afraid of is hard work, is she? She's not afraid of hard work at all. She goes out and gleans all day in the fields. In fact, the one man who told Boaz about this, apparently one who was in charge of the servants, came and said that she's only just now sat down to rest in the house with the others because everyone's taking a break. So she came in to take a break as well. But she's been working all morning just like the rest of them have. So she's been hard at work. And, of course, Boaz is very impressed by that. And so he talks about how she has been taking care of her mother-in-law and how she has come to trust in Jehovah God. She's left her father and her mother, the land of her nativity, meaning the land that she was born in, and also the gods of the Moabites. And she's left that in order to serve the one true and the living God. And Ruth answers in verse 13, "Then she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord." That is not Lord in a worshipful sense, but a small letter L, meaning the master of the land. "For that thou hast comforted me, and for that thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaidens." And what's the reference here? Why is she not like one of his handmaids? Okay, she works. She does. And also, she's not a native Jew, is she? She's a Moabitess, and although she is serving serving and working like the Jewish ladies are in the fields. Oftentimes, what they would do is walk behind after the men cut the sheaves down. They would bind them into stalks, and that's how they would transport them back to the threshing floor. And then, of course, they would separate the grain from the straw. Straw would be used for bedding and what not. As then they would thresh the grain. They would take a winnowing fan or fork, and they would go through it, and they would loosen the outer part, the husk of it, which is also called the chaff, whether it's barley or whether it's wheat. The heavy grain would fall to the floor. The wind would take away the chaff, blow it away, sometimes into a pile that would have to be burned later. But this is just simply the way. It was a lot of work, a lot of work that went, and there was only a small window of time. As soon as the harvest was ripe, you had to get on it. I mean, right now. There was no waiting around. So, I don't feel like it today. You've got to get on it because you only have a small window of time to make this harvest. And if you don't, it's going to go to waste and you're going to go hungry in the following year. Okay, so she's not a Jewess, but she's working hard. And I think that that's something that really impresses Boaz. And Boaz said unto her, At mealtime come thou hither and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. So he's treating her very kindly. He's talking very friendly with her. He's treating her very kindly, impressed with her work ethic, impressed that she has attached herself to Naomi and is providing for Naomi. No, Naomi, of course, is much older, apparently is not able to go and glean in the fields, but she's able to do that. So she's taking good care of her mother-in-law and herself in such a way. This is how they are going to be able to subsist. They are able to survive in that way. Daryl? I would hope that they have shoes on. Yeah. Uh, yeah. After you cut down the grain, after you cut the stalks off, those are pretty sharp. Um, I don't know. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this. Anytime we looked for bedding for either for the dogs or whatever, we were looking for what kind of straw. Wheat. Wheat's a little sharp. Oat. That's what we always look for. I don't know. It's not that the wheat wouldn't be bad, but it is a little sharper. The softer bedding is oat straw. So that's what we generally looked for. We went to buy, if we wanted to get a bale of straw for the dogs, for example, we'd usually look for oat straw if we could find it. The wheat straw is pretty rough. All right. And if that's after you cut that and that's standing straight up and you're walking, you better have something on your feet. Now, I will say this, that there is a remark about shoes in the book of Ruth. It's not going to come until the last chapter, and it's kind of a formality issue on how you seal a deal and how you bear witness to a transaction that's taken place. One man takes off his shoe and gives it to the other man, and that's how, that was the custom of the day, the tradition. But incidentally, Boaz was wearing shoes. I'm hoping that they all had something on to protect their feet, because that would tear your feet up. Right. It would not be pleasant walking through a field that has just been freshly cut. That straw is pretty sharp. It's really sharp, especially sticking straight up like that. It's like a bunch of needles standing straight up for you. And that would your feet would be pretty bloody at the end of the day. Okay, so Boaz takes care of her. He tells her when it's time for the meal, come in and dip your morsel into the vinegar or the wine, the grape juice, whatever it is, and they would put that together. Now, it might have been something to do with like the bitter herbs and such that they did it during the Passover time. That could have been as well. But to dip that in there, she was just like the rest of them. As far as Boaz was concerned, she had shown and proven herself to be faithful, and so he was going to treat her as such. All right. Verse 15, and when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young man, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. What's unusual about that, Dave? This is the prime, right? Let her glean even among the sheaves, not just on the edges, not just after you're done. Let her glean among you. Don't touch her, don't bother her, but let her even glean among the sheaves. Let her come in there just like she's working for us, and let her gather up the grain. Now notice the next verse, and let some also, some handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them and rebuke her not. So not only was she allowed to go into the prime part of the field where the workers were and to gather from among the sheaves themselves, they were to purposefully let handfuls of the grain fall where she could gather that up. So that was a good gesture on Boaz's part. And he says, don't rebuke her. Don't be harsh with her. You let her alone. Let her work and let her gather, because this is going for her and for her mother-in-law, Naomi. So she's very, very, very well respected here and very well treated by Boaz in the field. So she gleaned in the field until even, and beat out that she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. What is an ephah? A little more perhaps. This commentary, Dehoff says 7 gallons. That's a pretty good amount for a day's work. All right, you could make a good amount of bread with that, whether it's barley or wheat, whichever it would be. Now, I am assuming that this is wheat. Why? Doesn't say whether it's barley or wheat, but we started out with Ruth early on in chapter 2 during the barley harvest, which happens a few weeks before the wheat harvest does. The barley is called the first fruits, the time of first fruits. That's what gets you through, because your stores for the wintertime are beginning to run out. In early spring, the barley comes up and it ripens first. So you get the barley and that sees you through until the wheat harvest comes in. And it says that she worked with them through the barley harvest up into the wheat harvest. So I'm assuming that this is the wheat harvest at this time. Although there's no mention of this being wheat, yet it would stand to reason that she's gone from the barley now into the wheat harvest, and she's working through that harvest as well. Dave? I suppose it's a possibility there, but where is it? It says in the end of chapter 1, it says she joined him in the beginning of the barley harvest, and she gleaned through. And then it goes, I'm trying to find the verse here, and I'm not seeing it, but it says up into the wheat. Um, I'm not seeing it right now. Maybe somebody else will see it and you can point it out to us, but at any rate, it does say, and I do know that it does, but I'm just not seeing the verse right now. It goes into the wheat harvest. So most likely this is wheat. It could be possibly, but it says that she did work through the wheat harvest too. Yes. Okay. Okay. Well, they're still using the barley too. There's no doubt about that. In fact, they would eat the barley first and save the wheat, because that was to be gathered through and saved through the winter. So, and again, This is an ephah of barley, or 7 gallons roughly of barley. But we do know that she was working up through the wheat harvest as well. So I don't know. Apparently, okay, yeah, it does say barley here in verse 17. So that's good eyes. What's that? Verse 22, chapter 2. Okay. I'm not saying that. Okay. Okay, in the beginning of the barley harvest. Okay, yeah, verse 23. And she worked with Boaz to glean to the end of the barley harvest and of the wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. So she was involved in both of them. Now, as we see there in verse 17, it was an ephah of barley. So that's okay. That's what she was given, 7 gallons of barley. However, we do know that she did work all the way through the wheat. I was thinking this was before, but it's after. So my apologies. I got it mixed up in my feeble little brain here. But anyway, yes, this would be barley then. But then she does also work all the way up through the wheat harvest as well, which gets us into, that'll bring us into chapter 3. All right. I'm sorry. I was thinking that was before that. Yep. Timeline. I got it mixed up there a little bit. They also mentioned it as corn. Right. Corn is just simply a word that means kernel. Okay. When we see corn, and we see things like ears and corn, that you know what we're thinking of. We're thinking about the corn on the cob. That's what you and I are thinking about, which is technically called maize, M-A-I-S-E. That's technically the name for it, but we just call it corn. But in the Old English, the term corn just simply means a kernel. And that could be a kernel of corn, but it can also be a kernel of wheat or barley or oat, any kind of grain like that. Dave? Peppercorns, kernels of pepper, right? And that's what it is. And then ears, we think of an ear of corn. We think about, the big yellow stuff that you put in 2 hands and you make a mess going up and down on the cob, which we all love to do, or most of us do, I think. All right, but that's not exactly what they're referring to here. An ear just simply means like for the top part of the grain of wheat or barley or oat, whatever it might be. That would be the ear. And then the grain, of course, would be the kernel or the corn. Bob? Maize, yes. Yes. And even the Native Americans referred to it as such too. They didn't never it's the Europeans that came over here that started calling it corn, and we've gotten stuck with that. That's the name that we have today for it. It's kind of like also like the term cow. I say cow and something comes to your mind. Bovine would be a more accurate thing, or kine. That would be more accurate as to what we're talking about, right? Because we look at a bull and we say, look at the cow. Not really. A bull and a cow, that's male and female too, isn't it? Right? But that's the way we've come to talk about things. Same thing with corn. Corn is just is a European type of language that's been given from English that we just kind of inherited that for better or for worse. But it really just simply means a kernel. So it can be talking about, in this particular instance, we're talking about wheat. So here is Ruth gleaning among the barley and the wheat eventually, as we're going to see in verse 23. I was thinking that was, it all ran together in my study. But I was thinking this was preceding that, but she's going to work through the wheat harvest as well. All right, so she has an ephah of barley, and it says she took it up, verse 18, into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave to her that she had reserved, and she was sufficed. So in other words, all that she had, of course, she ate a portion of that for her work, but she brought back a bunch of that, and she said it sufficed her. And her mother-in-law said unto her, Where hast thou gleaned today? And where wroughtest thou? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, The man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. So things are starting to come together here, as we're going to see. Naomi gets planned because she knows Boaz, doesn't she? She's a relative. He's a relative of Elimelech, her husband, that she's lost. She's now widowed, of course. But Elimelech had land. He owned land. And Boaz is a near kinsman, a relative. So she's seeing a solution to a lot of things here. First of all, Elimelech had a plot of land, and she could redeem that plot of land. She doesn't have any means of working it right now. But Boaz could redeem the land and also perform the law of the Levirate marriage, meaning to raise up seed to the dead, which would be Elimelech and also Mahlon, who was also her husband, Ruth's husband. Elimelech was Naomi's husband, and also Mahlon could have seed raised up to him. This was the law that we read about in the book of Numbers especially. Okay, so the man's name is Boaz. Naomi said unto her, Daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, The man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. So there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. You remember, Naomi changes her name, doesn't she, to Mara, which means what? Naomi means beautiful. Mara means, somebody said it, bitter, okay? Bitter. She just feels like there's just no hope. She's lost her husband. Her hope was then in her two sons, who married the two Moabite women, Ruth and Orpah, and then they died also. And she sends them back to their parents and to their homeland. Orpah, weeping, goes. She kisses her mother-in-law and goes back to her family. Ruth clave unto her. Same word that's used to describe the uniting of a husband and a wife, cleaving to one another, that they're not going to be parted from each other. And even Ruth says this to Naomi, that nothing but death can separate us. We're going to be together no matter what. I'm not going to be parted from you. Such was her love for Naomi. And so here we've got this Naomi Mara, who's very bitter at this time, but she's starting to see some hope, isn't she? This Boaz is treating you very kindly, and he is a near kinsman. So there is some hope here. There is some hope. All right. And Naomi said, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Verse 21, Ruth the Moabitess said, He said unto me also, Thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. So he not only has taken care of her up to this point, all the way through the barley and the wheat harvest, she is to work by the young men, even among the sheaves. She's not just down in the corners of the field picking up the leftovers. She's actually gathering from the harvest itself. She's getting the large part of the harvest. She gets her portion of that. All right, and Naomi said unto Ruth, her daughter-in-law, It is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, and they meet thee, not in any other field. Don't go anywhere else. It's very likely going into another field, she may not have near as good a reception as she does here in the field of Boaz. Boaz is being extremely kind to her, and all because of Elimelech and Elimelech's widow, who is Naomi. And he's heard. Remember, there was no small stir in the town of Bethlehem when Naomi returns with Ruth. There's a lot of talk, you know how town talk would go. Naomi's back. Yeah, and she brought back her daughter-in-law, who's a Moabite. And it's just the two of them. How are they going to survive? What are they going to do? And that talk goes around. And not only that, yes, but that Ruth, that Moabitess, She's taking really good care of her mother-in-law. She's a very loving person. She's taking care of her. So that talk is going around, and Boaz has heard this. And that's why he's treating Ruth so well. Okay, verse 23, so she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean unto the end of the barley harvest and of the wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. So all the way through both the barley harvest and then shortly thereafter, a few weeks later, the wheat harvest. They're still working on finishing up the barley harvest, and then the wheat comes on. Okay, good times. Hard work, right? Very hard work. You imagine today with the invention of the combine and with gasoline and diesel powered tractors and all the things that we have today to harvest grain, how much easier it is today. Basically driving a tractor through a field. And that's hard work too, but not like this. There's no comparison. Cutting down the wheat with a scythe and gathering it up and putting it in sheaves and carrying it back to the threshing floor and all the things that you have to do in order to get it down to the grain that's actually usable to be ground into flour to make the bread. All those things, all the steps that are involved in it. We really don't have much of a clue today. What it takes. What does it take to get bread today? Walk into Kroger, put a few dollars down on the counter and take it home. And it's already sliced for you too. Not only is it baked, it's sliced, and all you have to do is eat it, right? That's where we're at today. But to understand what it was like just to survive back at this time, can you imagine the hard work that had to take place? And if you didn't do this, if you weren't involved in this, like Ruth and Naomi, if they didn't glean, where would they be in the wintertime? They'd be starving, wouldn't they? They wouldn't have any food because you had to gather this and store it so that you could be able to grind it in the wintertime, mix it with oil and water and whatever else you did, yeast, leaven, and bake your bread. And that's how you survived in the wintertime. Without this, you didn't survive. Dave? This is the real stuff. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. No, no, it's not, and it's so thinned down what we get in the grocery store today. And if you want to buy the stuff that's got all the grain and all the everything in it, whole grain, stone ground wheat, you're going to pay for that. And it is the reason why you have to pay for it is because there's a lot of work that goes into it. A lot of work, a lot of work. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we don't appreciate it today, and I say that I say we, meaning me too, because I've done some, but not a lot of that kind of work. That is hard work. Uh, those threshers, I don't know, Dave, if you've ever worked with those loud, noisy, banging back and forth. Well, one time, my grandfather had one of those. One time, man, I don't think I could hear for days after that. Right? That thing just loud, just banging back and forth, and all that was the way they shook. In more modern times, not how they do it today, by the way, but the way they did it back at that time, that thing just went back and forth and banged things and separated the chaff from the wheat. There, dirty. You couldn't hardly breathe. You almost had to have a handkerchief around your face to breathe, and then you had to shake it out every so often. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. We don't realize just how much work goes into all of that, but that's what they had to do just to survive. Tim? Right. That's right. Uh, poor is a term that might be relative, you know. It just depends on your attitude with it. A lot of times, poor folks eat better than rich folks do. A lot of times, because it's wholesome, and it's the result of hard work, and it comes very dearly. It's not something that's just given. It's something that you have to work hard for. And so that's good. You might even enjoy it a little bit more. You might even do that. Tina? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's several steps that are missing there too. But oh boy, do I remember that. In my grandmother's house, there was dough raising everywhere. You know, the refrigerator gave off a lot of heat in the back, and then up on top of the refrigerator were 3 or 4 pans of dough raising there because of the heat. And then on the oven, which had a pilot light on it, was a gas oven. All right, and that would they would be raising it there on the table, where it could get a little bit of heat, wherever it was. And there might have been 10 pans of dough raising at one given time in my grandmother's house. And then to smell that bacon. It was something. That's an experience. We don't really get that too much today. And still, there are a lot of steps missing in that. That's starting with flour. And if I don't know what all else goes in that. We're mixing it up, kneading it up. It's no wonder Grandma was so strong, you know, kneading that dough like that, just constantly folding it over. Uh, yeah, it it just it's a whole different process today. We're really spoiled today with what we have to do. Uh, it's very easy for us, you know, to just walk into Kroger or Walmart, pick up a loaf of bread, and come home. We got it. There you go. And toast it, butter it, whatever you want to do with it. And it's real quick. But isn't it something though to think about what our ancestors have done, not too in the not too distant past, how difficult it was to survive. Okay, now brings us to chapter 3. So Naomi's got a plan here. In my Bible/commentary, it says Naomi schemes for help from Boaz as the heading for that, and that's in italics, of course. It's added. I don't like the term scheme, although it's even used for the plan of salvation, sometimes called the scheme of redemption. Scheming sounds like there's something underhanded about it. I don't think that Naomi was being underhanded here, but she sees an opportunity. She sees an opportunity. Here's a near kinsman who's taken a favor toward Ruth, because Boaz is probably somewhat younger than Elimelech, of course, maybe older than Mahlon, Chilion. We're not told how old he is. But Ruth, who is a young woman, and you've got Boaz, who is obviously attracted to her to some extent for whatever reasons, maybe because of her physical beauty, but not just that. He is attracted to her because she is one who's taking care of Naomi. And that's important as well. But Naomi is seeing a way out of this situation that they're in. Before she's Mara, she's bitter. Now she's starting to realize there may be a way through this. And she's going to start working this plan out. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? What does she mean by seeking rest for her? Security, exactly. Set you up to where you're going to be taken care of, where things are going to be well with you. You're going to, what is the goal for this woman? Well, her goal was to be married to her son, Mahlon, and to be a wife to this man, and then they would make their living together. Well, now as a widow, she's unable to do that. And we got to understand the economy of the day, too. It's not like she could just go out and work a job somewhere and make a decent living. It just didn't happen back in this day. The economy is way different than what it is today. So she needed to have a husband, and she's figuring out how this can work out, because her husband is gone. She's widowed, but she is eligible to be the wife to another man. Now, verse 2 says, And now is not Boaz our kindred? with whose maidens thou wast. You've been with his maidens, you've worked with him, you've found favor in his sight. And he's a near kinsman. So there are laws, the law of Moses that comes to play here. And we can use that to our advantage, and it will be to his as well, really, when it comes down to it. He said, behold, he winnoweth barley tonight in the threshing floor. Well, there's that part of that process again. You know, when you're done cutting it, when you're done gathering it, and when you're done hauling it to the threshing floor, you're not done yet because there is the threshing part, the separating of the chaff from the grain in order to be able to use it. Chaff is not edible. It's just, it's the outer husk. And you get rid of that so you get to the grain and you grind that into the bread. So Naomi has this plan for Ruth. Tonight he's going to be threshing, and he's going to get wore out by threshing all this barley, and they're going to sleep right there. All the men who are doing this. This involves more muscle, so it's going to be the men that do this. In verse 3, wash thyself therefore, and anoint thee, and put thy raiment upon thee. Make yourself presentable. Basically what she's saying, isn't it? You might say, oh, that's pretty frivolous there. That's vanity, isn't it? No, it's reality. All right? She is a woman who can present herself as attractive. Since this man has already shown interest and kindness toward her, then why shouldn't she do this? Why shouldn't she present herself in such a way? And she says, and get thee down to the floor, but make not thyself known unto the man until he have done eating and drinking. Okay, so after the work is done, they eat a meal. And, of course, after they eat their meal, after working so hard all day, you're wore out. And what's the next thing? You're going to go to sleep, and you're going to sleep probably pretty soundly because you've worked hard all day and you just got your belly full. You're relaxing and ready to have a good night's rest. And it shall be when he lieth down that thou shalt mark the place where he shall lie, and thou shalt go in and uncover his feet and lay thee down, and he will tell thee what thou shalt do. Now, there are some who will read into this what it doesn't say. It's not saying that what she did was immoral in any way. It wasn't that she uncovered his nakedness in any way. She uncovered his feet. Now, what is unusual about this action? Understanding the customs of the people of the Jews, this is exactly how a wife was to approach her husband in bed. If he was sleeping in bed, she would first uncover his feet and then lie down at his feet, covering, maybe even warming his feet with her body. Okay? This is what Ruth was doing here. So what she was doing was, in a picturesque way, a way of picturing this, was requesting that he take her as wife. This is the way this is acting out. And it was not something that she did that was immoral in any way. She did not sleep with him, as we would say today, although she did go to sleep at his feet, or she did lie at his feet until morning. But she got up before it was too light for anyone else to see. But notice what happens here. As she said unto her, all that thou sayest unto me I will do. This is what Ruth tells her mother-in-law. And she went down unto the floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law bade her. She uncovered Boaz's feet, and she laid there. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of corn. He lied down, that's pretty satisfying, to lay there at the heap of the kernels that you've just gathered for your supply. Again, whether barley or wheat, it doesn't say. But this would be something that would sustain his family. And she came softly, very quietly, very discreetly, and uncovered his feet and laid her down. What we have here is a very tender plea that's being done here. Nothing indecent is being done, she uncovers the man's feet and lays herself down at his feet. Apparently keeping his feet warm, I would imagine, because if you uncover a man's feet and he's sleeping, he's going to wake up because he's going to get cold. Tina? It's also a sign of submission, too. It is a sign of submission. This was the customary way that a Hebrew wife would approach her husband. If he was sleeping in bed, so as not to disturb him, she would come in very quietly and lay down at his feet. I'm covering his feet. And, of course, he might, in the night, say, come up here and lay down beside me. He might do that, which would be, of course, lawful and right, wholesome, sacred even, okay? But at this way, this is how she would approach him, out of respect and out of concern for him. With tenderness and quietness, she comes in so as not to disturb him, uncovering his feet and laying down at his feet. Okay? Now, and it came to pass at midnight that the man was afraid and turned himself, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. Okay. We're looking at Boaz as being a manly man here, aren't we? A hard-working man. He finds out there's a woman laying at his feet, and he's afraid. What's the matter with him? What's that? Startles him, okay. Why would Boaz be afraid? Is he afraid of Ruth? No. How about God? Here's a righteous man, right? Boaz is a righteous man. He's a man who fears God, and he's already said so to Ruth as one who has submitted herself to Jehovah God. And you've left your family, your father and mother, and you've come here, and you've fallen under the wings of his protection. I'd like to remind you about that. Let's go back to that verse 12. Under whose wings thou art come to trust. All right? This is going to come to play here in the next couple verses. All right? This very word is going to come back. You have fallen under the wings of protection of Jehovah God because you have trusted in him. In other words, you're a convert. You are like a Jewess now. Although you're Moabitish by birth, you are behaving as a Jew. You have put yourself under the protection of Jehovah God. All right? But now he's afraid because he sees a woman is lying at his feet. And, you know, I wish we could get this across, especially to our young people, but also to our older people, that this is not appropriate for a man and a woman to lie with each other if they're not married. Is it? And that's the scary thought. He wakes up thinking, ooh, something is wrong here. Not because he's scared to death of Ruth. I don't think he is at all. I think he's scared of offending Jehovah God. I think that's where the real fear is. And yes, I think he was startled a little. That'd be the last thing he expected after working hard all day and then laying there at the heap of the corn or the kernels that he has just gathered, and then wake up and find there's a woman lying at my feet. Okay? So he's a little confused and startled by this, but he's also concerned about his status before Jehovah God, his righteousness. And he said, who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. So he knows who she is exactly. Here's her request. Spread therefore thy skirt. Keep those two words in mind there. Over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. If you're reading from the King James Version, that's what you're going to read. You read from the New King James or the English Standard Version, it's going to be entirely different. It's going to be the same word that's used back in verse 12 of chapter 2. Spread your wings over me. Like the wings of protection that she had placed herself under from Jehovah God, she's saying, spread your wings of protection over me, your handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. She's made a request. She's made a request according to the law of Moses. And there's no doubt as to what she's wanting right here, what her request is. She's asking Boaz to take her as a wife. She's asking Boaz to do the part of the near kinsman, the Levirate marriage law, raise up seed to the dead. Her husband Mahlon and Naomi's husband Elimelech. It'd be Elimelech and then his son Mahlon, be raising up seed to them. Okay? Which was according to the law of Moses, the Levirate marriage law. And this was the way it was to be done. You are a near kinsman and you're required to do this. She's making the request that he do this for her. All right, now there's some other things that are going to come to play in here as well, as you see. And he said, Blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter, for thou hast shown more kindness in the latter end than at the beginning, inasmuch as thou followest not young men, whether rich or poor. So apparently Boaz is not as young as he used to be. He's probably getting up in years. But here Ruth is showing kindness to him. And rather than chasing after younger men, she's decided that she's settled on Boaz because he's a near kinsman. She could have just gone off and done whatever she pleased, which would have not been in accordance to Jehovah's law. But she decides she wants to serve God, and she wants to include Naomi in this. And this is how Naomi is included, because Elimelech is going to, her husband who's gone, will be able to raise up seed through his near kinsman Boaz. This is God's law on that subject. Verse 11, And now, my daughter, fear not, I will do to thee all that thou requirest, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. They all know, they're talking about it. The words have come back to Boaz, and he's witnessed it firsthand. He sees how she's taking care of Naomi. So he says, I'll do all that you ask. But there's a kink. There's one little kink in this plan here, and they've got to work this through. In verse 12, And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there is a kinsman nearer than I. Always something. Makes it a little different, doesn't it? A little more difficult. Because the requirement of the law is the nearest kinsman. So, for example, in the case of Judah's sons, remember, in Tamar, when one son died, it was the next son who was to come. Not the youngest, but the next son underneath, younger than the first one, was to raise up the seed to his brother, and then all the way down to the youngest. All right, and we read about that in the book of Genesis. But again, there was a kinsman who was nearer than Boaz. So this presents a little bit of a difficulty, but they're going to work this out, and it is going to work out very well. We are therefore out of time. Hopefully I got you on the edge of your seat in suspense to figure out how this is going to work out. We'll pick up there in our study, Lord willing, on Wednesday evening.